So after a bit of technical hitches, we finally decided to do this interview on Zoom, and I am so happy and honoured to be talking to Kate about her new book, Second Spring. Kate, I've been sort of orbiting around and just noticing your Instagram and your podcast for about a year, I think. And it wasn't until today when I was like, I'm interviewing Kate. I better kind of make some questions and be professional about it. That I actually listened to an interview that you did about the book with Julia Davis, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also I have actually managed to buy your Audible of the book and managed to get it to stop saying it wasn't buffering or something, and managed to listen to some of it. And like I was saying just before we started recording this, I was literally grinning ear to ear, listening to your voice um, and your words, because they were not only resonating with how I see things, but they felt so. It felt like nothing I'd heard before, even though I've read so much and I am kind of in the same field as you, but I haven't. I haven't had it just laid out in such a comprehensive way, with such um, embodied and time. You've been working in this field. I don't know how long you've been working in this field, but there's a real wisdom in it. And I wanted to say that I feel really honored but excited, because it feels like when you meet, you find a new source of wisdom,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, okay, I can just tap this. I really I'll let you talk in a minute, but I really appreciated as well what you were saying in your interview about how space holders need need people to hold space, and they need these kind of
Oh, yeah.
infinite rings and rings of support, and that really, as a person that does hold space for people, that made me realize I don't have that. I mean, I do have it in place to a certain extent, but it just made me kind of go, oh. So there's an excitement to talk to you today, and also just a joy to find another person that that I can learn from. Someone that's a few steps ahead of me, and um, I will let you talk. I think
I'm really happy. I'm really happy. You can just do it, and I can just sit here and bask. I can just bask in the good feelings and the appreciation, and then
well,
we say goodbye. This is good.
yeah, well, do just bask in it, because so my first question really comes down to the title of the book, because I know what you're talking about, um, but maybe not everyone who's watching this does understand your kind of understanding about the cyclical
Mm.
rhythm of life and
Yeah.
of woman's life.
So the book is called Second Spring, and by that I'm referring to postmenopause, and I'll say a bit why. If you take the time from your first period as your first spring, so teens kind of time, teens into 20s, and at that time our mission is to find out who we are in the world. So we're going off and, I don't know, finding unsuitable partners and bumping into trees and trying to figure everything out. And then in our summer years, which would be approximately, I don't know, late 20s, 30s kind of time, our concern is much more with having who we are manifest in the world. So that might be children, or it might be art, or business, or a career, or all of those, or what have you. And just to say, this is kind of our developmental need. These are developmental needs that we're talking here. So obviously they often are frustrated. Mostly they are frustrated in the real world. And particularly when they are frustrated, we will feel that longing more. If somebody in their teens is injured, held back, not protected in the way that we would like, then they will feel that longing to explore, and that they will feel particularly the pain of that restriction, because they cannot explore, and so on through the seasons. So spring and summer are, the sort of socially acceptable, applauded part. We have lots of energy. We're wanting to be out there and be we're sort of quite full of estrogen, so we're very more accommodating, very often putting other people's needs before our own and that kind of stuff. And then along comes autumn, and that is really the beginning of perimenopause. And this is like the beginning of your premenstrual phase, where we start to turn inward and become more reflective and go less towards pleasing the outside world and more towards knowing what it is that we need. Like typically a lot of space. So if you're listening to this and you feel like running for the hills, then you're in exactly the right place. And you're completely on the money, you're completely on the nose. And quiet and space, time for yourself in perimenopause. And you will be knowing your truth. And this will change into a sort of a more accepting period of menopause, where we're more curious, we're less rejecting of whatever challenges we're suffering, and we're more accepting and curious about the challenges and more able to engage with our healing process. And that would be a wintry thing. So that's kind of equivalent to your period, that kind of wintry thing, maybe low energy, and you needing lots of rest, lots of nourishment of all kinds of food, and nourishing stimulation, nourishing people around you. And when we're able to rest, it gives us excellent access in our winters to our intuition, say, and creativity and dreaminess, all that kind of nebulous liminal stuff. And then we emerge into second spring. So these seasons are not particularly tied into biological processes, but I would certainly say that second spring would be coming once your periods have stopped for at least a year or more. It's a definite postmenopausal place. And this second spring has many of the same qualities as your first spring. So like sort of blinking in the sun, wondering what the hell's going on. Well, who am I again? What? Like, oh, I could go and do this. And so typically people rush off and do, like, I have a few friends who rushed off to do really expensive trainings right after menopause, and I've been going, are you sure? And and then yes, having an abrupt change of mind, and then feeling like, oh, I should have had this sorted out by now, and But of course, it's a new cycle, so we come into second summer, and second autumn, and second winter as we prepare to die and leave the earth. So this is so if talking about second spring it's like dropping the pin on where menopause. Gosh, I've never really articulated this way. This is good. This is why I like doing interviews, because I articulate things differently each time. Calling it second spring drops the pin on where menopause sits in our lives, i.e. at the end of the first cycle of adulthood and at the beginning of the second.
And I've just got a question, do you feel that women go through this process no matter what they do, you know, the fact that they've stopped bleeding and some time's passed, do you think a bit, I don't know if you know Bill Plotkin's work, but do you think that we go through these, um, do you think we can not meet our goals? Do you think that every woman comes out into second spring because that's where she is? Or are there people that get stuck in autumn or winter?
I think that each, and that I should say, this seasonal map is taken from Red School.
Yes.
And I have changed it a bit, simplified it, and because I wanted it to be truthful to my experience and what I see around me. And it's Red School's part of Red School structure is that there are developmental tasks within each season. So what happens if, if you're, I mean, I can talk personally. I'm a classic late bloomer, really. So age is so confusing. It changes all the time. I think I'm 56 or 57 now, one or the other. I think I might turn 57 this year. But I had kids late, so I had kids like when I was 38 and 40, two children quite close together. So they're
I did the
teenagers.
same. Yeah. Well,
Mm.
40.
Well, shall we talk about that later? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perimenopause, mothering.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, let's talk about that in a bit. So I was late to find a partner. I was late to really get my mojo going. All through my 20s and 30s, I was thinking that long. Oh, I must make my mark. I must, I would call it success, but what I thought that was, who knows? But I really feeling that longing, and then in that summer period of my life, but never quite getting a grip on, never quite having the confidence, or I spent a lot of time healing wounds. Basically, that's what I was doing. I was in psychotherapy training and therapy, and for years and years and years. So I was busy doing that, really. But it meant that my summer longing, my longing for actualization, I suppose you might say, to see myself, see my work in the world, got shoved into my autumn.
Yeah.
Along with the kids. So then you have a bit of a road crash, because I'm there in a period of my life that is reflective, wanting to push through and be out there.
Yes.
For example.
Yeah.
So I crashed.
Yeah.
My adrenals went, no, stop it.
Yeah.
But you can see it too, and there's the sort of very academic head girl who behaved terribly, terribly nicely all through her teens, and then breaks out and goes nuts in her 30s. Or somebody who gets married early, has kids, and then goes nuts, breaks out and does all the exploring that they missed in their teenage years.
Yeah, and I think I mean I don't know if you also, I'm sure you probably do, is like Jane Hardwicke Collins talks about the each rite of passage as we go along will give you a learning for the next one, and you kind of get a life story. Like, for example, I feel because I was induced at birth, kind of hurried into the world, and I always kind of like feel a bit rushed into things. I very much feel that I'm in winter still, even though it's nearly been 2 years since my last bleed. Um, and I quite like that feeling of just deciding when it's my time for spring to come, and taking my own time with it. And I guess each woman will go through these the get to her second spring in her own.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with us. It's really important that we remember that these are internal states,
Mm-hmm.
and you know where you are from how you feel from the inside.
Mm. Yes, and I think that's what I love about your book is that it's very much going inward and embodied, uh, empowering each woman to really feel her way through and to know that her idea, for example, like her idea of rest, can be very different from another woman's idea of rest, and it's not prescriptive. And I think that's particularly what I love about your work is this deep kindness and acceptance and like you were saying, really reassuring women that even though it's so challenging, can feel deathly, does feel deathly and very, very scary, is to I guess it is your book is part of the cocoon of the chrysalis, of the metamorphosis. Your book is that it's holding a safe vessel for women to do this changing in, and
I really hope so. I really hope so, because there aren't enough safe spaces.
I think it is, Kate. I think it definitely is, and it's really, really beautiful. I don't think I've come across a book um, that's doing that in the menopause books. That, I mean, maybe there is. I don't know, but it feels very, very empowering, and also not. It doesn't gloss over things. You're very much putting things you're saying in this toxic, um, linear based living. No wonder women are crashing and burning at perimenopause, because we are not honouring the cycles, because we've been taught not to from day one, and I think that's very important to state that.
Yeah, I mean, it's our Western culture is so relentless, and we're so steeped in the doing. I wrote a bloody book, for goodness sake. I'm so steeped in the doing, in the kind of achievement, and it's really hard to do the simplest thing is to listen to your body. It's said 50 times in every bloody yoga class or whatever, and it's hard. It's a really hard thing to do in this culture,
Yeah, yeah,
and it takes constant, and I'm an old pro at this kind of stuff, but it still takes constant realignment, constant coming back to myself,
yeah.
constant sort of wandering off and being
Constant
obsessed with
vigilance.
screens, and then having to come back, and it's a mindfulness practice.
Yeah. And we have to model it for each other, and show. I love the way that you take time off social media.
I
That
need to do that again.
Yeah, me too.
Book launch. I'm completely obsessed again.
Yeah, well, I think you should be. You've got. I think I've got another question.
Yeah.
Um, Please, we'll come back to things if we forget, or because I like to come back to the late mothering one. But
Mm.
writing a book, it's um, it's a journey in itself. I would like to know your journey. What did it trigger? What did it heal? What did you learn? Was there a kind of, have you got like a sentence like that? I know it could be more than a sentence, but have you got like a sort of, um, well, what did it bring up and
God,
show you?
everything, everything. It's such a process. I started writing just to clarify for myself what I had experienced, to clarify the psychological process, to see what I thought about that, and what I had witnessed in my clients and retreat participants, and very secretly. It was a spring. It was this. Tell you what, I'll tell the story of the book with a seasonal with the seasons of creativity, because that will
Yes.
help everyone to illustrate how that stuff works. So it was a new project. I just wrote quietly. I didn't tell anybody, and I didn't even admit to myself I was starting a book, because I'd seen how hard that was, witnessed other people doing it.
How long
It looked
ago was
like
this? How long ago are we?
2.5 years. It was summer 19, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Summer 19. So that was the spring. So it was unbearably tender. And sitting down and writing was, felt excruciating. And all through the process, and then I came out about it, and it became more summary and more robust, and I started to tell people what I was doing. And all through the process, I had a conviction that this was going to happen. I've always been a bit like, oh well, never mind. So I've sort of given up a bit too early, or felt, had a script like, oh well, that sort of thing's not for me, or that would be much too big, or much too hard, or those kinds of things. And I had absolute conviction that I was going to bloody follow this through, and it was bloody going to happen. And I was at it like a terrier, like a Jack Russell. With enormous mental focus, and I made it the most important thing. So it had a real fire somewhere behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, it also came through me. So I have been supported hugely by all sorts of people. Again, I have in my family background is quite independence is prized, and keeping quiet and not asking for help. And that wasn't what happened with this one. I kept asking for help, and amazing help came and supported me. And I found all sorts of people who just said, yes, this is good, let's do it. And I was, woo, really blown away. And having sort of touted it around various publishing houses and being told that, well, there were quite enough, there were too many menopause books being published. To which I replied, well, have you seen how many diet books there are? Like, what?
Exactly.
4 menopause books to see what? That's too many. What? Anyway, I gave up trying to. The rejection just felt too difficult, and so that kind of went, having that sort of taking it out to publishers as a summary thing, like taking the baby and throwing the baby bird into the air and letting it fly, and then having it fall again, was just too exhausting. So I thought I would self-publish.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just about to do that. That must have been a summer later, the following summer, so 2020. And then I asked for help. So I was getting endorsements from like the authors from my women's health book section.
Yes.
And one of them, Millie Hill,
Yes.
said, would you like me to introduce you to my agent? And I went, yeah. And so, and that all worked through, and she took me on, and she got a book deal with a big publishing house, so with HarperCollins.
HarperCollins, okay.
Which means that it has many people who've published books with smaller publishers, particularly on women's health. They don't get the money for the marketing and the publicity and stuff. But that has been very different with this one. They've let me write the book that I wanted to write without any. I mean, I had really good editors, which is why it's a good book, because editing is like, oh, it makes me look so good.
Well, yeah,
so
I mean, I haven't got it in my hand.
Much better than I am.
But it looks, what I've seen people flick through it, and I've also got Millie Hill's period book for my daughter, and I can see how they've formatted
Ah,
that, and
yes.
it looks like you've got similar stuff, like
Mm.
pictures inside and
Yeah,
segments, and
yeah.
I mean it's a thick book, isn't it?
Mm.
It's like
Big old chunky bugger. Yeah, I kept. Yeah.
72 chapters, but
Yeah.
I
But they're
can't wait.
short. They're
Yeah,
they're
yes,
deliberately.
and but really kind of spacious and comprehensive, and because I'm going to get a friend to bring it out because I live in Spain, and I'm going to put a link to your independent friend bookseller, because it's nice to buy
Mhm.
from that and not Amazon, but I was going to get one
Friends of
here.
Ambleside. Yeah.
What's her name? What's her name?
The bookshop is called Friends of Ambleside.
Friends of Ambleside. Or you can buy it anywhere, can't you? But I I tried to get it sent to Spain, and there's all sorts of Brexit kind of taxes and things like
God.
that. And in the end, I'm just going to get it sent to a friend of mine who's coming to see me in April
Okay.
anyway. So that's how I'm going to get around it. But yeah, someone described it like the artist's way
Yeah.
of of menopause or
Yeah.
something.
Wow. Doesn't get much
That's
better than that, huh?
amazing because I love the artist's way. I
Yeah.
mean, the artist's way is one of my major tools in life.
Mm.
I've done it about 3 times, and
Mm.
yeah, so that's wonderful. That do you feel that that's? Have you done the artist's way? Yeah,
Yeah, I like Julia Cameron very much.
me too.
Mm.
Mm. Go on. You didn't get to the birth yet.
Oh yes. So yes, that's seasonal. So there was so that kind of whole kind of agent book deal editing process started a whole other cycle. So the sort of spring of submitting the manuscript, feeling all tender and bereft and vulnerable, and then them accepting it, and feeling very big and summery and excited, and then more editing. So there's sort of cycles and cycles and cycles until finally now, and obviously the editing process is a very at each stage, each editing process is an autumnal process,
Mm.
because you're using discernment to pick out what stays, what doesn't. You're letting go of stuff. Well, any artist has to let go of their ego, to crumble, to be collapsed, and then get up again and find your, battling with the inner critics, and exhausting. And now I find it's so interesting. Now I find myself, because I'm new to this. I've always made stuff. I've always been an artist, but I've never written a book before. So all this process is all new to me, and I now find myself in a creative winter again. And
Mm.
I
I
know
was going
what
to
the next
ask you. Yeah.
I know what the next book is, and I'm pretty sure of the format and blah 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 blah, and creatively I am, it's not flat, it's quiet.
Mm.
So sometimes you get a lack of creativity in your life, and it feels like a catastrophe. You feel like you
Blocked.
blocked. That's it. People
Yeah.
say, I'm blocked. I can't squeeze anything out. But because the really useful thing about seasonal awareness is to know about winter and to identify your winters. So then, instead of feeling I'm blocked, I'm stuck, I'm broken, essentially. I'm broken because I'm not creating. We can sit in the winter and say, okay, so this is winter. So what does this winter need? It needs gazing. I'm looking out of my window. It needs gazing at twilight skies.
Mm. Mhm.
It needs leaning back into the unknown.
Mm.
And that's physical, like leaning back rather than leaning forward into the screen,
Mm.
leaning back, but also just not knowing. So I don't know what this process is, this book business. I don't know where it will go, and being okay with that. So it would be because I'm pretty productive, and I'm quite, on one level creatively, I'm quite high energy. Like I really like doing things. I like to push them out. it would be really easy for me to get stuck into the next project or another project, or I work with fabric and thread and stuff, and I draw, and I do lots of different things, lots of different media. So it would be easy. I'm getting very hot now talking about it would be easy for me to get stuck into the next thing. But I know that if I do, the time isn't right because it's winter, it's quiet.
Yeah, and you're just launching this baby.
Mm.
It's yeah, it's something that maybe needs time to go out a bit further in the world.
Yeah, it needs time, and so there's a big arc, sort of from the beginning of writing to now. There's a big cycle, like a life cycle kind of thing. But within it, there are endless cycles of excitement and crash, and productivity and emptiness, and and on and on.
Mm. Yeah.
Which you're familiar with. We're all familiar with these things.
Yes.
But naming them, saying, oh, this is spring, I must be careful with my baby, or this is summer, I can take it out somewhere, or just naming them and having a little clue hook into what that might need is just so helpful. It makes everything so much easier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I see it. It's just once you see it everywhere. I mean, I first came across it with five rhythms. The five rhythm thing, which is the same cycle. You can kind of overlay it, and yeah, it's a wonderful tool, and I think that it really allows. It's an allowing tool, isn't it? It's allowing things to be. Well, maybe I'll ask you this question from this woman in my group, because it feels like a question that comes from understanding why. Anyway, I'll ask it to you. So this question from Barbara. She says, "What is around me at the moment is burning anger. It's related to real life, but it feels like a forest fire. And I'm curious to hear perspectives on this in relation to menopause shifting. It feels destructive, but I also sense I'm burning something up or setting something alight." So could you talk about that part of the cycle of perimenopause, and how that
So
comes?
my response is yes, yes, yes. Yes. So in this autumnal place of perimenopause, it makes us physiologically, because our hormonal picture has changed, it makes us more sensitive to emotion, to everything, to everything, to absolutely everything on every level. But in this case, emotion. So stuff that we weren't necessarily feeling in the past, we then feel very strongly. So we all know that the feelings are absolutely fine. We don't have to judge ourselves. I mean, we all do, because we have a horrible feeling. We think, I'm a horrible person. At the same time as knowing that our feelings are legitimate, and because we're human, so we hold both beliefs simultaneously, all of us, all the time. So I just got to put that on the table. The feeling is it's absolutely fine and appropriate to have whatever feeling. So the question is to Barbara. Was it Barbara?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is for Barbara is how can you allow this feeling in a safe enough way for yourself, and allow it to be expressed in a safe enough way? And that would be different, that would be different for everyone. That depends on things like how well resourced your life is. If you're skint and you're hanging on by your fingernails and you have no money and no support, then there's not much room for losing your ship, because that would put you in a perilous situation. But there are still ways that you can draw or paint or dance or express or chat to your friend or allow the feeling in your body or what have you, so that you're feeling safe and contained enough with it, because this is a vulnerable time where we naturally feel that we're losing the plot and we're falling apart. So for our nervous systems it's important that our nervous systems are held enough so that we're not putting ourselves under constant agitation, because that won't help at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it's and it being human. Well, if it was me, I'd probably go out and lose my shit and do some crazy dancing, and then I'd wear myself out, and I'd probably knock myself on the head. I'm always doing things like that, or trip over something and bash me toe. So I have to sit down, or wear myself out, and then I have no energy and I crash for a couple of days, and it's like, okay, so that's too much. So how can I do that in a more contained, safer way, so that I can then, do the kid stuff and the work stuff and the...
Yeah. And I suppose it's almost normalizing that it can have a quite extreme it can feel very extreme, like it if it reminds me a bit of childbirth as well. Like if you're not expecting it to be very intense, then it's very scary. But if you go into it seeing it as a very intense experience, then then you're not then then you're not going to feel it's dangerous so much as purposeful.
Yeah.
And I think that this, like, I know in Red School we've got so much to talk about. I'm just seeing it's 5 to
How did that happen, huh?
there's so many things I wanted to ask you about.
Well, look, we can go to 10 past. It's fine. Let's give
Okay.
ourselves another 15.
um I was just going to say about Red School. I remember them mentioning this kind of burn down the house moment, and 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 it's a kind of like this fire element, isn't it? That she's talking about as well. This anger. I mean, anger can obviously be a sign that your boundaries are not being respected, or you're not respecting your own boundaries. And then the burning down the house moment of this, fucking change your life from one minute to the next, which I did, and lots of people do. And in a way, I suppose there's a kind of balance, like you're saying, there's a balance thing, but there's also an elastic band that sometimes just snaps. And maybe, and what I'm curious is, I, is that I'm not saying right or wrong, but sometimes things have to get so dramatic to actually make a big shift. Some people's lives um, are not sustainable, but they carry on in a trying to keep it sustainable way. So, I mean, I guess my question is yeah, it's good to make space around it and to find ways of holding and support and
Yeah.
rest. But then
Yeah.
sometimes there's just that
Yeah.
explosive part of the
Mm-hmm.
path. Do you think that's part of the path, or it doesn't have to be?
I think we all have our own stories about it, and for some people, they will move through menopause without much disturbance,
Yes.
and some people will explode, and everything in between. And who's to say? I think looking at our birth stories is a very interesting way of looking at it. Looking at how I think there's something, I put something in the book about how we do change. How do you do change? Some people ignore it, and some people research the head out of it and make an Excel spreadsheet how to do it. And some people go and lie on the earth for 2 years, belly down, and how do you do change? That is a
Yeah.
very... what supports change in your life, and what sorts of things help you. and what sort of things trigger you. I think that's quite interesting. And if you look at it in through the lens of some change, like, well, any change from birth through leaving a job, starting a new job, going to a new school, moving house, it's all there already, probably. And it's easier in a way to look at those because they're less, if you find something that's less charged, find the less charged one, or find the most charged one and see what really sent you over the edge.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Yeah. Change. Yeah. So yeah, these 25% of people that, well, however many they are, I think I read that you wrote that somewhere, that don't really experience
Yeah.
perimenopause as anything.
I think that statistic was 25% without severe symptoms or something like that.
Severe symptoms.
It's kind of manageable stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that how long have you been working as a mentor for perimenopausal women?
Yeah. So long, and I still can't even say it. I'm not sure. I think since 2016.
Okay, so
Like that. 15, 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a long time. I can't even work that out in my head. Yeah. So 6, 7 years. Have you noticed a change over that period? Because I think we all feel like there's a kind of feminine rising, changing paradigm, a lot of more conversation. The workplace, there's much more visibility of menopause. Have you seen an actual change in how women go through menopause? Do you think that women are suffering more?
Well, I don't know. It's fairly self-selecting. The sort of people who will seek me out are the sort of people who are going to be sort of looking for a conscious menopause and who are open to that idea anyway. So I think from what I see myself, I think that's pretty self-selecting. But yeah, I too see this rise in awareness. It's on the telly, it's in the newspapers most weeks. And with the newspaper stories, the headline writers will go for the negative, fear-inducing headline, even when the story is something different, because fear sells more newspapers than good news. So the temperature out there is still fairly fearful.
Yeah.
My mission is to change that. I think that my little corner of the world, I can make a little dent. I hope to make a little dent in that. Yeah, but it worries me that with more awareness grows more fear. We go from ignorance to fear, but then we'll go to education and empowerment, hopefully. So, I mean, I dedicated the book to my daughter because I hope that by the time she gets to my age, it'll be just like, ha! She'll be saying, ha! My mother wrote the book. Ha! And it won't be a big deal for her.
Yeah.
But I think we have a bit of work to do meanwhile.
Definitely.
It's actually, I mean, looking at the newspapers, looking at the mainstream, I can barely, really truthfully, I can barely look at it because it does my head in. Because the level of fear and pathologizing is so prevalent.
Yeah.
So prevalent.
Yep.
So I tend to stay away from it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, and if you're afraid and you're counting symptoms and you're somebody saying, well, I've tried this pill and it's really working, and you haven't, and it's not working, and just.
But I think you say your little corner of the world. Do you not think that your book can be read by any woman, or do you
That's the
think
plan. It's been de-wooed. It's been just substantially de-wooed.
great? So,
Yeah.
so hopefully, that's going to sort of slip into a mainstream.
Yeah. My ambition is to have it on the till at Tesco. That would be good.
Yes. Okay. Great. Yeah. I mean, I'm really looking forward
Next
to
to the
it.
sweeties, if they
Yeah.
still do that.
um, what was I going to say? I really want to read it properly. Um, we are going to do a little. You've got one that we can give away in like a little competition. But I'll write about it
Yes.
in the blurb.
Yes.
And I just think
Yeah.
that everyone in my circle needs to read it, and hopefully they can get their hands on it. I really did appreciate having the Audible because it was just great. You were in my earphones, and it's funny when you listen. Like when I hear your voice, I can hear
You're messing with my head.
your
Oh.
accent. No, but
Oh.
you're kind of. I don't hear your accent when we're talking like this, but when I don't know, it's kind of Oxfordshire. I don't know where you grew up, Hertfordshire, or I can hear that, and it's
Really?
yeah, I can hear your accent, and I don't hear it when we're talking, and it was so interesting to hear that. I what I just what else did I want to ask you? There's oh yeah, should we just go because you dedicated to your daughter?
Hmm.
We both had. I had my first child at 37, but I was 38 3 weeks later, and then I had
Mhm.
my second child at 41. So my second child was a boy, first child a girl. So I don't know which. Did you have a girl and a boy?
I had a boy child first and then a daughter.
Okay, so you're opposite to me. Um, but we both did that late um, sort of coming, I started getting perimenopausal symptoms in my mid 40s and went through perimenopause with young children. And what would you like to say about that? Because you said let's come back to it later. So just to finish off, is there anything
Okay, just to say that it's really hard that if you have um if you have
so hard?
children if you have children late in your biologically fertile life, then you're going to have small people who need you all the time at the point when you are desiring more space.
Yeah.
And that is tough. And added to which, you're postnatal and perimenopausal at the same time. So postnatal, biologically, physiologically, your hormones are shifting. You're quite very depleted from the birth. You probably haven't rested enough because most of us, because we don't get the opportunity, because we don't have the support around us to do that. So you'll be depleted, and as females and mothers, will probably be doing the lion's share of the work as well, highly likely. And we feel that we're failing. I felt that I was failing. I felt that I was what I was doing was, I mean, a lot of it is very tedious and repetitive and messy, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
And we're made to feel that we're failing because we're knackered, and we want to, for myself, I don't have this. I don't have the single mother's guilt about leaving my children. I'm really happy about leaving my children, and I've been lucky enough to always have that. But I know that for many mothers of children, feel really bad about this desire to be by themselves and this desire to go away.
Yeah, this
So
kind
just
of
to reassure you, that's normal.
two-way pull, isn't it? I mean, I
Mm.
heard you say, and I agree that you know to take a postmenopausal sabbatical or to really have that time. I I really crave for that, and I can't actually practically just go, okay, I'm going off for a year. I'd love, and I could see that if you'd had children much younger, that's also got its things. But
Yeah.
but then by the time I'm 50, I can't remember. I can't remember how old I am. I'm 50. If I had children at 20 or even 30, I could go, yeah, I'm off. I'm having this year for myself, sort of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, it's just a two-way pull, and then a three-way pull with the elderly parents
Yeah.
topping it off. Um,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. So I think that's reassuring. There's a lot of women in my group and that I talk to that have had children. I mean, it's very common that people have
Mm.
children later in life,
Yeah.
and when I meet women who are like 43, 44, wanting to get pregnant, I don't actually hold back. I do say, think about it. You're coming up to perimenopause, and I know that longing because I had that complete broodiness and desperate wanting to have my own
That's
children at 37. Um, but yeah, you need to really go into it with your eyes open, I guess, and get your
mm.
support. Like you're saying, get your support
Yeah.
up.
So I think knowing to for everyone, knowing to expect to need more space in our autumn years is really helpful. Naming the season and understanding the your requirements within that season, allowing for space. So it may be that it's highly likely that you can't go off go off for a year and leave them. Well, you could do, but there would be a cost. And to be really frank, the times when I did go away, there was a cost. There was an impact. They're small children. There was acting out going on. So I had to come home. When I came home, I had to deal with that. It's real life. And I was lucky to get the breaks that I did. But when we can't go away, when we're not able to, we can still do things like slow down. And there are a few people who are really good at talking about this. One of them is Sarah Stars. You'll find her on
Yeah, I don't
Instagram
know.
and places, and she talks about cyclical parenting. And her son is quite small, I think, but so a lot of it is about sort of early years stuff. But the principle is the same: to educate the people around you. Say, okay, so this is autumn. Stick the chart on the fridge. This is autumn. This is what we need. Point out their autumns. When you're like this and you're really grumpy and nothing works and you feel really awkward and bump into things and fall over and you hate yourself, that's an autumn. What do you need? So that educating the people around you so they understand what you're feeling and understand that it's not permanent and you haven't had a personality transplant. And doing things like going slowly, doing things like saying no to extraneous social engagements, turning off social media, choosing how much news, if any, you watch, listen to, take in, choosing your media, choosing what comes into you. I think is like really a really key perimenopausal skill. So if you're, I don't know, I didn't, but if you're homeschooling, if you're a vegan homeschooling parent, then don't go near the kind of people who are going to criticize you because it's just exhausting. Stay away from them. Let them do their own thing, and because if you have less energy, and you're more permeable, you have to choose where you put your energy. That's the smart thing to do.
Yeah.
And if you can avoid sort of having to deal with annoying boundary breaking challenging people, then that takes a lot of energy. Or dealing, yeah.
Well, yeah, you need to. It's knowledge, and I think that's exactly. I'm sure that's in your book. That this just to have this knowledge, and to see there is a way through that can make things not just 10 times easier but like 1,000 times easier, that there is, what we miss is having this wisdom passed down to us from elders, that we're shown and we're supported, and we're navigating this territory. It's almost like virgin territory. We're trying to complete this rite of passage, um, but with so many things that aren't actually sustainable. So then your book is like how to navigate in Western 2022, how to navigate and how to untie these knots, and how to find the way through with all the all the givens that aren't ideal, um,
Yeah, in real life.
in real life.
Yeah, because the archetypal cycle, whatever cycle you're talking about, the archetypal cycle is a beautiful thing, and we can all go, oh well, the mystery of the cycle, isn't it marvelous? And that it is marvelous. But the real juice is when that mysterious archetype meets meets the real world, and then we have to call in our inner resources and our inner knowing, and that's when it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd just be cycling happily.
Sorry.
Otherwise, we'd just be cycling happily. And
Yes.
everything would be groovy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But life isn't like that usually. Isn't always. Well, sometimes it is.
Well, I mean, I could carry on talking for hours.
We
but
could keep going for a while, couldn't we? I feel
I,
as though we've got the introductions sorted out. Like, right, we're about to get stuck into the good stuff.
definitely. I mean, yeah, there's more, isn't there? And there's yeah. Anyway, but maybe we'll stop for now. Just
Stop for now. Well, I can come back and we can do
yeah.
another one soon.
But I'm so grateful for you, for this book, and for
Oh,
walking your talk, and for for really embodying it, because that's how we can learn from people. Is it has to be embodied by the people that are teaching it, and I think it's wonderful that you're sort of holding the flame, the torch.
yeah, well, I'm just wandering around bumping into furniture and going, ouch.
Yeah, but you were focused enough to write down, and you've been working and
Yeah.
learnt so much, and you've been able to put it down, to take that time and have that brain to be able to put
Yeah.
it in a format that can actually go into people's souls, to be transmitted. And that's you're a book lover, and book lovers understand the power of a book, that a book is such a it's more than a book, it's a transmission, and I think that that's really important that you've done that.
Thank you. Yeah, it felt really important.
Yeah. So thank you very, very much, Kate.
Thank you, Lizzie. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. And yeah, I really enjoyed our chat. Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.